Hey everyone, so we are back with the part 2 of the series where we'll be now talking about Git commands and we'll be also seeing what is the function of each and every Git command. So yeah, hope you watch the part 1 of the series because it's important that you have an idea of what is version control and Git, which we have covered in the part 1. And so in this session we'll be covering the topic of Git commands and what is the functionality of each, so that it helps you to know which command is doing what specific function and when to use it, basically. So that would help you a lot, right? Also note that you have a Google Docs link in your description box where we have mentioned all of the commands which we'll be demonstrating. So if you feel somewhat difficult to follow, you can just open the document parallelly and run. Before starting with the demonstration, it's important that we also learn about these things. If you are an absolute beginner, you should surely know the difference between what is untracked, staged, and committed. We'll also discuss about what is modified, but as a beginner, if you're watching this video, then untracked, staged, and committed should be very clear in your mind, right? So now that you have made a Git repository in your system, once you add new files, once you create new files in your Git repository, all of those files would come under Untracked. So until and unless you specify that I want to maintain the history of this particular files, Git would take it as, or Git would term it as untracked, right? It won't take each and every file, it won't take any file which you are creating, adding, unless and until you specify that I want to maintain the history of this project or this file, right? So what you do is that once you are specified, once you are now determined that I want to track the history of this particular file, you bring those relevant files to the staging area. So this is like you stage the files and add the snapshots to the staging area, right? So this is like bringing the relevant files to the staging area that you want to maintain the history of, right? So you might have a lot of files, but you don't have the compulsion of maintaining the history of all of them. So if I give an example, then you might have a file which stores the credentials of a database. If you have worked on any DBMS projects, so you have database credentials for connecting to the database. So you don't have that need to maintain the history of that particular file, and also you don't have that you even don't want that file to become public. So what you do is that you add that file to the git ignore. Or the second thing is you don't actually maintain history by keeping it in untracked as it is, right? So this is how actually untracked and staging concept also works, that you bring only the relevant files which you want to track to the staging area, relevant files, and then after bringing it to staging area, you commit them. So all of the files present in the staging area are clubbed under one commit, right? So it can be a single file in your staging area, it can be multiple files also. So suppose say I bring one HTML file to staging area and you create a commit, so that one commit would include that one HTML file, single HTML file. But now if I bring 5 more files to the staging area and still create a commit, only one commit would be made. No separate 5 commits would be made, right? So one commit can enclose multiple files or single file as well. So it's always a kind of a tip or advice to all the beginners that make as much as commits as possible with smaller kind of, because making more commits means you are maintaining more history also. Because if you club a lot of things together and then commit the things, then it would be very confusing for you to review at a later point of time, right? So if you're mixing HTML files also, JavaScript files also, CSS files also, if you're clubbing 20 files in one commit, then you will not be able to actually review it at a later point of time. It would be very difficult for you to understand what particular files are included in this commit, what changes were made, because there will be multiple files. So keep your stagings smaller and commits more, right? So bring as like a single file you should bring to staging area and you should commit it. Or even if you are working on a very big project, then bringing single file is not feasible obviously, but bring relevant files as we also mentioned before. So if you are working on a project which has HTML, JavaScript, CSS files, you can bring only HTML files first and commit them, bringing only CSS files and committing them, or else sort all the files on the basis of your features you're working on. That is also very helpful on the go when you're reviewing your project. So make useful commits, right? If you are making vague commits, obviously it will only like be very difficult for you only in the later part when you actually need the history. So now that you have committed means that permanently storing the snapshot to the Git directory. Okay, now we have understood what is committed is. So committed is basically permanently storing the snapshot to the Git directory. Now let's consider one more example where your parents have told you to take photographs in the festival season of the like decorations done in your home. So they have told you to take the photograph, right? So will you only stand just opening the camera in your phone and just wandering in the home? Obviously you have to click that camera button to actually take that photograph and save in your gallery, right? So that exactly is what the function of commit is. So committing means you are clicking the camera button and taking the permanent photograph which is getting saved. So that is what actually committed means as well. So if you relate to that example, committed is the only thing which is actually responsible for the history of the project. When we say history, it means commits, right? So, and also untracked and staging are not relevant for your history, like no history is saved for these things, untracked and staged, but the history of commits is maintained. So does it mean these are useless? No. As you can see, there's a specific process that you have to bring those files from untracked to staging and then committed, right? So you can't skip untracked and staging and directly commit. So you have to follow the process, but this is one of the information we are giving, that committed is the one thing which is responsible for maintaining the history. And that is why it is important, and I'm repeating one more time, that make useful commits, because this is the thing which is responsible. Now what happens if you modify after committing them? It will return to a stage which is called as unstaged. So it is not untracked also, but it is not staged also, right? So it will be unstaged. You have to again bring it to the staging area, and then you have to again create a commit. So it is like untracked, staged, committed, modified, and then returning to a section which is called as unstaged. You have to again bring back to the staging area and then create a fresh commit. You can't club this in the old commit. You have to make a fresh new commit for the modified thing which you have done. So this is how the cycle goes on. This is one iteration I have showed. So this is how actually the cycle goes on, and as you can see, explanation has been given for 3 of the stages: untracked, staged, and commit. So now moving forward with the commands. So let's briefly discuss about this and let's go to the demonstration, because enough of theoretical concepts. So git init is the most basic command which initializes or creates a Git repository for you. Git add is basically bringing your files from the untracked version, as we discussed, to the staging area, and you have variation in this which we'll discuss in demonstration as well. Git commit, I need not to explain, self-explanatory. It is used for making the commits. Git clone is basically, we'll see this in the part when we are working with Git again. And Git push is again one of the things which we will see in the GitHub tutorial as well, right? So this is all for the like basic commands and main commands. Many more commands are planned for the demonstration, so we'll just directly skip to the demonstration. So thank you for watching this part 2 of the session, and we'll meet with the live demonstration in the part 3. Keep watching the videos and keep asking your doubts in the comment section. If you have any, feel free to discuss it. Feel free to connect with me if you have any doubts which you want to clarify. Keep learning and have a happy learning as well.